road trip style. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri, and Jared, why don't you share with the listening audience where you are?
So
and
over
our
my
friends.
right shoulder here, I'm at the USA Hockey Level 5 Coaches Symposium. Some of us on this podcast want to continue our education in a timely manner, and so I made the trek, the 6.5-hour trek from St. Louis across I-70, braved the construction and the big rig trucks that almost ran me off the road. There's probably a couple of Canadian license plates on some of those trucks, so they knew where I was going. But I'm joined here. We're in the green room. I think that's pretty cool. We're in the green room of the Hyatt Regency in downtown Columbus, Ohio, not too far from where the Blue Jackets play. And we're joined here with Dan Jablonic and Scott Paluch. We're kind of spaced out here in the green room so that we don't overpower each other's microphones. But this is exciting on so many levels. And again, Scott, Dan, thank you guys so much for joining us. Dan, why don't you give a little intro of yourself, where you're from, and what you're doing for USA Hockey, and then we'll turn it over to Scott after that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Drew. Dan Jablonic, a player development manager for USA Hockey, based out of the Central District. So I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I get to cover the states of Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. And we're really a local resources for all things player development, including coach education and parent partnership or information in today's fast-paced youth hockey landscape. So really excited to be on the show and share what we're learning. And I hear that you have our Swedish and Finnish friends on the podcast later on. So that's going to be a treat as well. So thank you. I grew up in Minnesota and just really happy to have some fortunate, upbringing with some incredible coaches that instilled the passion in hockey, and I get to live it and work with some incredible people like my colleague across the room here, Scotty Paluch. So really excited to be here.
That's a sauce right across the
how
zone there to Scott. That's how you do it there, folks. That's how you do it.
Segue extraordinaire. That's a little bit too much. I like the green room. Can the green room turn into the red, white, and blue room for this week? Is that possible to throw that out there? Danny did a great job explaining what we do. My 16 years of USA Hockey, and I'm director of player personnel, and it's been an unreal 16 years. My prior life was 20 years of coaching college hockey at Bowling Green, Boston College, and back to Bowling Green, where I currently still reside. Originally from Chicago, though, so I know that's going to raise some ire amongst some of our hosts there. But it truly is. I always tell people I learned more in the first 2 years of this position 15, 16 years ago in terms of human performance, athlete development, than I ever did in the 20 years of coaching collegiately. It's just a different animal. It's something that completely grabs you. Athlete development it really brings out everything. You talk about a competitor, you want players to get better, and you'll do anything you can to put in any type of curriculum or information to pass on to coaches, anything to make our athletes better. It grabs you, and it's what's really happened over the last 16 years.
Well, Dan and Scott, I'm just really pleased to hear that, you're not going to pile on to Jared's usually Detroitisms that he throws out and Michiganisms that are pretty frequent on this show. So outstanding job.
Yeah, it's funny because now I live 30 minutes from the Michigan border in Northwest Ohio, and I have to listen to a lot of it. So
well,
so what we do is we just root for Cleveland instead. That's what we do now. Which
I'm not used to traveling to this state with my own vehicle. When I was growing, I moved to St. Louis from Ann Arbor. So for a guy who moved to St. Louis from Ann Arbor in this town, typically you would rent a car in Toledo. But I got to tell you, Columbus so far has been tremendously welcoming, and I love the red, white, and blue room. So that's what we're sticking with.
Yeah,
love
Jared,
it.
Do they let people into Ohio with Michigan plates?
Well, the exchange rate, is.
What's mind-boggling is what's really crazy with the Ohio-Michigan rivalry. There is that section in Northwest Ohio that there is a lot of Michigan fans that reside in that Toledo, Perrysburg area. Even I will admit, even down in the Bowling Green, but we try to still keep it more on the Ohio side. But I believe at one time, I think Perrysburg was the border. Perrysburg, Ohio, was the Ohio-Michigan border. So I think there's some historical reference there.
We can get into the whole war, the Toledo War, where a couple of farmers might have got poked by a pitchfork.
I got buddies who are farmers. Be careful.
I worked in Perrysburg for a brief moment, and that was like going into enemy territory at times. But it's funny. The Ohio folks say we send you guys all of our best football players, but as I look at Columbus's team, I mean, you got Adam Fantilli, Renski. I think the hockey's is flowing south from Michigan into Ohio. But all right, no more digression here. I'm gonna turn it back over to Drew. He'll get us back on track.
Oh yeah. Well, Scott, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you guys on. And today we're talking a little bit about a coach and a player's perspective. But we're talking about mindset, what we also would call, mental development, and then on ice and off ice. And so those off ice characteristics might have some physical components to it. So our audience includes moms, dads, coaches, players, refs, team managers, basically everybody that touches youth hockey. But here we are right on the cusp of a new season. We talked a little bit last week, or I did, about how I was antsy. I think Jared's antsy too. We're all ready for the kickoff of the new year. And so I think it's a great time to talk about this topic of mindset, mental development, and also some physical characteristics. And that could be anything from I'm growing, I'm not growing, and what does that mean to me as a player as I develop? So let's dig into it. And Jared, where do you want to kick it off?
Well, I think I go back to an ism from one of my older son's coaches. You've made the team. Now the hard part. Now the hard part begins. And oftentimes when we're dealing with players who make that team, whether it's a Pee-wee, Bantam, midget, they get a little complacent. They don't understand that journey is a continuous journey. So Dan, let's take a scenario. You made the team, but maybe you're on the fourth or third line. You've got, some room to grow still. What are some things that USA Hockey, or that you and your experience have employed for those players who, want to continue that journey, get that, that development curve going up and to the right as fast as possible. And really from a mindset standpoint, because I think, again, that complacency sets in. It's, I made the team, but the job's not done. How do you communicate that?
Yeah, great question. I think, Jared, so important. When you look at,
I think you're on mute still.
Danny.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right. I think, Jared, great question. When we look at that from, the youth perspective, right? We know that each player is, essentially their own experiment. And when they're going through this at different stages, and I love that you brought up, the physical, and then obviously the mental side of it, the mindset, right? And, for kids, they set goals, and we want them to set goals at the earliest age, and then to understand, hey, how do we attain those goals? And more importantly, how do we keep building on those, right? And using those resources. And I know you have a lot of parents on this podcast, and Paluch has lived it, to the youth sports landscape as a parent. I'm going through it right now. I have twins that just turned 12 today, and it's changing every day. And I think it's important for us to look at the entire picture, not just the one side, and compare versus somebody else. So as far as tools for those kids, just giving them the ability to set goals, work hard, and enjoy what they're doing where they're at. And that's hard to do as we go through when you're 8 years old up to 10 through 12, and then wherever this game will take you. So the more that we can actually build resiliency in those kids, and not only complacency as well. And I think that's something that's our comes back to USA Hockey and our mission and our vision, and make sure that we're competing for gold medals at the highest level, but we want to make sure we're doing it the right way when it comes to youth hockey, and understanding that healthy balance between winning and the competition the right way. So I think those are fun things for us, is when we're working with coaches, working with parents, kind of setting those priorities up to set them up for success. So not only when you're making the team, but then, okay, how do I make my teammates around me better, to really build that up and challenge them every day? Because we know we play a team sport, but we have individual skills, and how do we actually develop those as we go through that ladder of development. So that's a start for us, I think. And Pooch, you probably can build on this, coaching at the college levels, but I think at the youngest levels we got to make sure that we're keeping it incredibly fun for these kids, so they're learning and developing and setting those goals to where they want to be.
I think a neat follow-up to that, and even to back up a little bit, and it's an unreal topic, but I think from, when we're talking making a team, you have that, I think the decision or the part of that process, even before that, is parents and athletes understanding, hey, what should I be looking for in the team I want to make? Why would I want to be in this particular group? And I think development itself is such an amazing. Do I want to be on this team for the right reasons? Because I'm going to be in the right situation. I'm going to be in an environment that actually is going to allow development. It's going to put development at the forefront, as opposed to some of the other things at younger ages that kind of cloud development and mass development, and some of the outcomes of competitions can get in the way of actually everybody developing. So I think the question or the process even can go a step further, figuring out, hey, am I in the right environment? Am I going to the right program? And the reasons why I'm going to the right program. Is it putting together the things that are necessary for me to become a better athlete, and the experience? I'm going to have a great experience. I'm going to enjoy exactly what I'm doing.
So I love that, Scott. I love what you just said, because that even backs it up a step. And I found just in both my boys playing hockey, I've got one that just finished the journey at 18U. I got a 14U right now, and Jared and I both coach. But that's a really important piece of information that you just said.
And it's a hard one. It's a really hard one.
Yeah. So I wanted to dig into that just for a second. What would you suggest? I mean, if you're a parent and you're saying, look, my kid wants to keep going, and what are tips that a parent that you would share with a parent on how to evaluate an environment, maybe evaluate a team, and determine if that's even something that they want to pursue?
Yeah, Drew, I think that that type of being able to make those decisions and the process to go through that, we could spend hours. Hours on this, and it's an amazing thing. I think the when you're talking about the experience of your athlete has to be at the forefront. Okay, and we mentioned, we started this whole segment with, hey, I made a team, and I'm third or fourth line, and I think right there of, hey, is that where we want to be in terms of development? Is there is there something out there that creates an environment that, hey, I'm gonna I can be here, and the coach allows development and surveys, and certainly is constantly evaluating individual players on that team, and thus, and most importantly, allowing for a better experience. And I think letting players, because we're talking, we go different ages here. We could be talking 10 years, and that's where it becomes really, really important to understand, hey, where you're at in that path of development. And I think it's so critical that parents can evaluate. And I've always talked about this, and Danny has too. When you walk into a building, when you walk into a rink, man, you can sense it. You either get a good vibe, or you get something that, oh man, this is not what I want to be a part of. And I think the more we can put ourselves in, I be a little selfish with it. What is best for my athlete? Not my cousin or my friend. What's best for my young child? And I think that's a critical piece.
Dan, what do you tie into that? But we talked about parents and the players. How do the coaches create that environment and create that?
Well, and Pooch is right. We can talk on this for a long time. It's such a passionate subject, I think, because our society is really good at labeling things. And for us, the more that we can look at it, get back to that, experience. What is it offering? Hey, a label of, how many A's are in front of it is one thing, but what is they actually offering within that club, right? Is it a positive experience for my child? Is it something that is there learning taking place? And I think from that coaching's perspective, right, are we doing the right things to really make sure that, hey, I have a team of players I know I have a top half and a bottom half, but am I coaching all those players to understand that, hey, I'm challenging them at the right times? And that's something that's critically important. Or are we just, favoring the top half because it's easier to coach them, right? I think that's really important to look at, of the individual development within that team concept, and how do we actually give them the good stuff, right? The game has changed so much right now. It's incredibly fast. The players are incredibly skilled, but are we teaching actually the decision-making process, or are we just teaching the execution of that, right? I should say the results of that. It's so important. Are we looking at the process and allowing these kids to kind of get back to our American developmental model tagline of let them try things, let them fail, let them have fun, let them succeed? I think that's critically important, to keep it simple, play, love, and excel all the way through, right? And that's the framework that we really want to build on. So for parents, I think it's, you can feel it. We go into, Scotty and I get to go in along with our colleagues to a lot of different rinks. You can close your eyes and you can actually feel the energy in that building, right? Are those kids working hard on the ice? Are they trying? Are they in a positive dynamic? Are the parents happy in the lobby, or are they a little scuttle mode over there and all of a sudden they're talking about coaches or things like that? You can feel that within the rinks, that it's moving in the right direction. I think those are, kind of key indicators for parents to look at. Hey, is this program for me? Is this something I really want my child to be at wherever they're at, right? If it's in that developmental path.
I mean, you hit on some great things. I love when you talked about the number of A's or what have you, or the number next to a letter, depending on what team you're on. And I think that's a hard concept for players and parents to really understand. They see it as a success failure, as almost like a zero sum, and it's not. We try to preach that this is a journey, and some kids get to this point a little quicker on their journey, but at the end of the day, we're all going to end up in that same place. And so how do you communicate with parents and players who maybe are dealing with some of that initial disappointment, like, oh, I made it to the last tryout, or I made it to the last evaluation, and I'm not on the team that I wanted to be on? And we try to tell parents that, hey, sometimes it's better to be the first forward on a team that's maybe a little lower than the 12th or 13th forward on that team that you didn't make this year. Talk a little bit about that mindset and dealing with the disappointment, and then how does that become part of development?
Yeah, I'll start us off and I'll let Pooch take this one, but I think it's incredibly important to understand, like, that's the beauty of sports, but more specifically hockey. It's hard to play our sport, right? You have to have a certain skill set and keep developing. Even the best players at the highest level, our NHLers and our Olympians, are working on their craft every day. And I think that's important for us to understand. Adversity is part of that journey. And those are all life skills that are incredibly important. There's a reason why, corporations want student athletes, because they understand what they told before. They know how to work well with others. They can cooperate. They can challenge and compete every day when they don't make that team, to work even harder and develop their skills, to take a weakness into a strength, and actually take those strengths and make them even stronger. And I think that's the beauty of hockey, and obviously the friendships that you get to have in this sport. It's like I said, it's easier said than done, but I think that's the important piece, that whole mindset. It's okay. It's part of that journey. It's not a linear line when we look at things when it comes to development, right? It's, for every step forward, you might be taking 2 or 3 back at any given age. And that's something that's incredibly important for us to understand, that, physical is one thing, mental, social, emotional, that whole landscape of, what and how they're interrelated to develop the whole player. And it's, I'm looking over my shoulder and I see a couple of our Finnish friends over here, and they got a great the simplest developmental model is their framework they build off of is human development number 1, athlete development number 2, and sports specific hockey number 3, in that order, to really understand, like, hey, this is what it's all about. And then obviously you get to the details of those kind of things. So, Pooch?
I think it's so good, Dan, as far as even going down that path, but I even more important, and I think we've already hit on, make sure you're doing your homework as far as what program you want to be a part of, what is happening in the program. And I think it allows for, if you're if you've done your homework and you understand what each club is all about and the existence of what the training looks like, what the experience is all about, that negative of not being on one team can quickly turn into a positive if you're focusing on the right things. And I think as a family and as athletes, if we understand, I quickly become a player I did not, if I'm not in program A, but program B for me was a better experience. I'm involved in much better training sessions. I'm in a compete mode all the time. I'm around really good people. I got coaches that care. That initial negative can become a positive really quick. And I think, again, it all goes back to really understanding where, as a family, where we want our athletes to be and what is the best developmental. And yeah, we can provide choices. And maybe we want it here, but maybe we're just not quite ready for it. But we have an unbelievable setup in program B because we did our homework and we're going to put our athletes in the right situation.
Yeah, and I love that. I would just like to add, I think it's important for us as parents, like how do we support that child? Because every parent wants the best for their kid, right? And we play such an emotional game. And the more that, especially when they start to make that shift, when you get to 13, 14, and now it's on those players, right? Where that developmental shift, it's more on them. I mean, how much do they want that? The parents can only drive them to the rink so much, but really, what do you want out of that? And have those conversations, with your child, so then they can work closely with their coach and their association and find out, hey, how do you get there? What is that path? What is that developmental path? How I can work that plan to fully benefit, that player long term. Because when we look at it, and when we look at a fully developed player, and we laugh at this when we say this, but it's 23 years of age, but yet we look at a kid that's 15 and say, okay, that kid can't skate or that kid can't do this, but
right.
Yet they're closer to, we laugh about this because they're closer to 8U hockey than they are essentially professional hockey at that time. So that's something for us to really look at, put it in perspective where they're at and have some fun with it and making sure that you're focusing on that human first.
There aren't a lot of guarantees, guys, but here's one you can guarantee that every one of us and every parent out there that's listening, we all want what's best for our kids, and we want all good things to happen to them regardless. And I think, again, it's so important that we really understand what good or what positive is and can be. And sometimes, again, by doing as much homework and understanding that, hey, this might not always be right. And we all want, we get so excited for any successes that our kids have, and that's not going to change. It's always going to be the case. And for us, if we can come out of this and understand, hey, let's really be aware of what a positive may actually be, can be very helpful.
Great stuff, gentlemen. Let's put a pause on it for just a second, and we're going to talk about our tournament sponsor, Big Bear Tournaments. This segment is brought to you by Big Bear Tournaments, your go-to for unforgettable youth hockey travel experiences. Big Bear hosts spectacular tournaments in some of the coolest towns across North America. October 3rd through 5th, there are tournaments in Ann Arbor, St. Louis, and Indianapolis, as well as an October 17th tournament in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. With plenty of teams registered across the board, don't delay. Apply today. Plan your next great hockey trip at BigBearTournaments.com, and don't forget to tell them Too Many Men on the Mic sent you.
Little 5-minute break here.
All right, welcome back to Too Many Men on the Mic. Before we get started in this next segment, this segment is brought to you by 5B Design. St. Louis Hockey business custom gear that stands out and stands for something. It's time to meet 5B Designs. Founded by Shannon Berhini, a proud St. Louis mom and entrepreneur, 5B Designs is a woman-owned small business that brings purpose to custom apparel. Whether you're suiting up your youth or high school hockey team or leveling up your company's branded swag, 5B delivers top-notch quality with a personal touch. Need a team store? That's not a problem. Corporate polos or event giveaways, they got you covered. 5B makes it easy with fast turnaround, flexible service, and designs your players or employees will love to wear. Check them out at stores.inksoft.com/5B Designs. That's the word 5, and see what purpose-driven apparel looks like. Well, for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll notice that we've had a little switcheroo here. And huge thanks to Scott and Dan for joining, giving us the USA Hockey viewpoints on player development from a mindset and from a physical standpoint. We're joined here now at the Level 5 Coaches Symposium by some friends from over the pond. We've got Jon Lind from the Swedish Ice Hockey Association and Pyry Lukkarila, Finnish Ice Hockey Association. So we've got the Swedes and the Finns. Thank goodness we don't have any Canadians here. But
I love
this
it.
is
International flavor. We've
gone
international.
International. Yeah. I think we have a huge opportunity here to talk about and give folks back at home a really good perspective on youth hockey and how things are done in Sweden and in Finland, and where there's some synergy, where there's some differences, and really why, and maybe there's some things that we can learn as coaches and players and parents from our friends in Sweden and friends in Finland. So why don't we kick this off to Jon? Jon, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Drew and I would love to hear more about the Swedish Youth Hockey Association in progress.
Well, thank you, Jared, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Jon Lind, and I work as Director of Education and Research at the Swedish Ice Hockey Association. But I have a background as a player, played at a national team level as a junior, then moved on coaching for like 10 years, both juniors and seniors in Sweden. Been working with the association now for the time flies, but I guess it's like 8 years now. So that's my background.
Jon, tell us a little bit about the journey for a Swedish hockey player from, we start at 6U or mini mites here in the United States. So from that 5, 6, 7-year-old through, 18, how does that look? What does that progression look like? And what are some things that are unique to Sweden and fuel some of the success that you've all had in player development over the years?
Well, we started kind of the same age. Like we have our Learn to Play program, which starts by the age of 5, and it runs then to the age of 7. And it's a program run by the association where we provide like coach education to all the clubs part of the program. We provide with education materials, and we support them in this Learn to Play program. So basically, most of the players are starting their hockey journey in this program, and it's kind of looks like the same in most of the clubs. And from there, we start to play hockey in teams, and in Sweden as well as in Finland, we play on very small surfaces from the age of 8 to the age of under 12. So we play first 2 years, we have 1/6 of the ice. So very small area games. And we think this is really important for getting more reps in, better decision making, and for coaches not to coach the game, let the players explore, develop long term. Then we move on to play 1/4 of the ice, and then we move on to play 1/3 of the ice. And then we start playing full ice when the players are U13. And one thing more that we have to promote long-term development in Sweden, we don't have tiers or divisions in youth hockey. So if you are, for example, U14, you play equally regardless of your level. We don't have levels. And we think this is important for long-term development because it cools down the system. We know that players are developing differently. We want to avoid looking at players as talents just due to physical maturity or psychological maturity. So we think this is a good way of actually cooling down and not having players stressed through the system. So the first time when you actually select players for a team is typically in Sweden for under 16. Then we have divisions in leagues. And then from U16 in Sweden, you move on to what we call is hockey high schools. We have 27 certified on boys side, 6 on female side. And this is programs tied to school where you can have hockey as a topic in school. So you can practice 3 times a week during day as a school topic. And then you play with your club in the weekends, or also practice in the evenings. This gives us opportunity to have more time on ice, develop kind of the individual skills more, and then you have team practice with decision making and everything in the evenings. So that's basically the big picture of Swedish ice hockey for youth.
Drew, you're muted there, bud.
I'm so sorry, John. I love that. What I was saying, why it was on mute there was, we run practices and we'll start at a 1/6 of an ice sheet like that, and then progress to another drill where maybe we're a 1/4 of the ice, and then the 1/3 of the ice, and then ultimately we're using the whole ice surface. But I love that your development model is focused around the ice surface, and then I love how that graduates until ultimately you're playing full ice at an older age than our kids are in the United States. I also like the no level aspect of it because you're watching the kids all at the same time. U14, for example, is a really interesting time, I think, for kids in development. Some have hit puberty, some haven't. And then that creates a whole dynamic with the player themselves. Why am I not growing? I'm looking at my peers, they're growing, I'm not, or I am growing, my peers aren't. And so I love that you don't break it down into different levels. And I like the word you use, talent. You don't look at them as talent, you look at them as a group, and you're developing the group at the same time. What a cool model.
So we don't often, so if you could see the room here, you would see that Jon and Pyry are right across from each other. So it's good to have a Finn and a Swede across from each other. So my younger son actually has a Finnish goalie. He's played for us for the last 2 years, and so I'm going to be excited to talk to him and his mom. They just got back from Finland and they were there for midsummer. And before I go to you, Pyry, first of all, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. But I'm looking up trying to pronounce your name, and it says that it means snowstorm. That's awesome.
It is.
So that's
It
a
is.
great way to lead it. He's like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So we've got a hockey player from Finland whose name is literally Snowstorm. But tell us a little bit about the Finnish program and how that compares and competes with Sweden.
Hopefully we can compete. Hopefully, and I think we have been competing pretty well. So so Pyry Lukkarila is the name, and I work as the head of coach development in Finnish Hockey Association. Like our systems are really close, like similar. So I can like 90% is the same. So just from the get-go, just to learn to play. For us, it's Lion Hockey School. So everything, our logo, probably not going to see it in the picture, but it's a lion in our flag also. So Lion Hockey School is where we kind of start in 5, 6, 7 years old. So the same thing that in Sweden. And then from U8 is the first teams, and from that it kind of builds up. For us, we have tiers before than Sweden has, but what normally happens is the goal is to find players and kids starting from different ages the right place to play in, so that and that, let's say a bigger club, they have AA, AAA, 1A teams, but they're practiced together. So that's a one team. Those games are just then put so that the kids are put in place where they can succeed, and you can play in different levels, and so it's not that you're put to AA team and you practice with that team. So it's normally it's one age group and same coaching and everything like that. So So basically, it's the same. We play up until even in U13, we play part of the games in smaller ice, so 3-on-3 cross ice. So part of the season is 5-on-5 full ice, starting off from U11. Before that, it's cross ice, smaller ice games, and even in U11, U12, U13, part of the games are cross ice still. So U11, it's like half is cross ice, 3-on-3, half is 5-on-5 on big ice, and building from there. And then pretty much the same that in Sweden, we start counting goals. So the parents are seeing the score on the board first time when we're in U11. Before that, you're not going to see a score anywhere. And then the statistics, we're going to start showing statistics in U14. So you're not going to find whose kid has scored more goals than somebody else's before that. So just to kind of take it easy, because development takes time, and nowadays I feel like everybody's rushed to be really good at early ages, but a lot of times that's not how it goes. So you can be really good at hockey at 15 compared to other people because you've done a lot of hockey, but that means also that you haven't done necessarily a lot more other sports or being really active outside the rink. So that usually come and bites you when you're 18, 19, 20. Somebody or a lot of people actually comes to your level and passes you just because of you've been just focused on one sport. So that's what we want to kind of compete against, because we know from research and how player development goes that I've said this in multiple occasions where I've been speaking. I don't remember where I heard it, but I like the quote, like, do you want your kid to be the best at U12 or U20 or in juniors or at 25? So pick one, because you're not going to have both, or it's extremely rare that you're going to see that the same player being really, you got these exceptional generational talents, but those are really far and few apart. So yeah.
Well, Jared, I two takeaways, and I just wrote them down because I didn't want to forget it or lose it. No scores until U11 and no stats until U14. So if you're a parent listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, hear that out. They have a model that's working for them, and they don't even turn the scoreboard on until U11. They've got a model that's working for them. They're not even tracking stats until the players are 14 years old. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at this too from a coaching lens, and as this model has developed, since you both have been involved with your respective associations, has there been incremental changes? Has this been something that's been more generational? It's just been, this is the culture of Finnish and Swedish hockey, or was there like a turning point similar to what the United States had with our ADM, that there was a turning point where, you know, Hockey Sweden or Hockey Finland said, hey, we're going to do it this way? And then how do you get coaches? How did you get coaches on board, or is there consistency across
different
ages, coaches? How does it work?
I can take that, but I think, at least in Finland, I think the same is in Sweden, because we can't afford to lose any kids. In Finland, we got total number of players that we have in the country, combining every player, is about 68,000. And we got under like 35,000 junior players. So if we would to do it the other way, building materials, cutting kids off, like, we wouldn't have the sport. Like, who would play it? So we have to take care of every kid. And also because we know, like, you cannot say from a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old that who's going to be a great player or not. You can take a wild guess, but honestly, you're not going to know. So it's as long as possible to as many as possible with the best possible quality coaching. And then let's see, when everybody's 25 and their brains are fully developed and they're adults, let's see then where we are.
John, anything you want to add to that from your own experience? Is it a cultural thing, or was there a point in time, to Jared's question, where you said, this is what we're going to do from here on out?
No, I think it kind of develops organically within our system. Also, we have the same situation with not so many players, so we can't afford to lose anyone. So we kind of made changes accordingly, aligned with where new knowledge and new research came out. Like, for example, if it's better to play in small area games, we did research together with the Finnish Federation to find out the optimal surfaces. We also find out those kind of things to cool down the system. We don't have scoreboards either. We count the goals, but we don't have standings in leagues until they're U13 either. So it's kind of more organically developed as research could support our decisions. So we progressively try to be better all the time, just to have this long term. And to Pyry's point, I think the long-term development is about giving everyone the chance, because we never know who is going to make it in the end. And I used to say the example where there's research from an NHL draft, and we can assume that the scouts in NHL, around 400 of them fully employed, are the best at their job in the world because they're scouting for the best league in the world. I think we can agree on that. And they are following the players for 2 years after puberty. But when we look at the results from draft, they can only predict 1.5 round. After that, it's around the same amount of players from 3rd to 7th round who is making it to the NHL. So they can't even predict who is going to make it all the way. And 2 years ago, 15.7% of the players in NHL was undrafted. But sometimes we put it in the hands of volunteer parents, coaches to try and select who is going to be the best. And a lot of times they do more harm than they do good, because what they typically see as talent is physical and biological maturation, not talent. So they mix up temporary physical ability for being talent, because they say, I can see if a player's talent or have hockey sense. But what they see is a fast player getting faster to the puck, which gives the player more time with the puck. But it's not hockey sense, it's not talent, it's just physical ability. And this is really hard to separate. So I think we need to build systems that are long-term and give players the time to develop.
Drew, could you imagine going into a tryout season or an evaluation season where there's no tryout, no evaluation, and the anxiety level of our kids and our parents is just brought down? How much more fun, and think about it, you spend the first 2-3 weeks trying out and getting evaluated, where you could be on a team or you could be with a group of kids playing and having fun. I mean, I think if anything, it goes back to more of why kids play games to begin with, why we all played games to begin with. And that's really to be with our friends, have fun, and see where that journey goes. I gotta believe that amongst your kids, as they grow and go through the different ages and levels, there's more appreciation for all of their teammates. It's got to be because you realize that you're on this individual journey. And I think Jan, you said it best. It's like, you may be older and faster right now, but that doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now. But when you're put in that situation, I gotta believe the kids gravitate and have a strong sense of camaraderie, and they're not. We have some issues with our setup where kids will start to evaluate each other and say, "Well, I don't want to play with this kid," or "I don't want to be around." And this goes back to what Scott and Dan were saying about choosing your organization. I just love this. Is so refreshing to hear, and I think it's intuitive and it's common sense. And you know what they say about common sense, Drew. Common sense is not so common. So
yeah, and I came to the same conclusion too. I mean, it really just brings it back to fun. I love that both of you are really pointing to a North Star and saying, look, until 23, you're not fully developed. So if you're a player out there watching this, listening, keep that in mind. And we all have good days and bad days, but realize that until you're 23, you're not a fully developed player. So you are still on this journey. And then that creates the opportunity get better and better each day.
And I think Jan's perfect synopsis was the NHL scouts don't get it right most of the time. And so if we're trying to build an evaluation and a tryout system that mirrors that at 9, 10, 11 years old, you know, again, parents and players recognize that no one in this sport is perfect. We're all trying to have fun and do what we feel is best, and have fun and enjoy the ride. So, Pyry, Jon, I can't thank you guys enough for joining us today. This has been a super treat, and although he's not on camera and hasn't joined us today, big thanks to Bob Mancini and his team, and obviously Scott and Dan for joining us today. Pyry, Jon, anything you'd like to say before we sign off here and get bound to the symposium for the weekend?
No, just thanks for having us, and a message for all the parents and coaches out there. Take it easy. To develop players and human beings takes time. We don't know who is going to be best in the end, so give as many as possible, as good opportunities as possible.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. And I think everybody has to remember that every player, every kid has potential. We tend to talk about talent, and it kind of gives us like somebody has it and somebody doesn't. Everybody has potential if they just given the opportunity. So don't deselect that potential with tryouts and selecting teams too early on. Just let the kids play, and if there's a possibility to have a lot of kids in the team, take everybody who's willing to come and make sure that they have a good environment to grow in.
Well said. Well, that's a wrap on Too Many Men on the Mic. Guys, have fun in Columbus. Jared, I can't wait to hear what all great things you're going to bring back into the show going forward. Gentlemen, have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.